Hey guys, in this video we'll be continuing with the topic the middle ear cavity. If you haven't seen the first part of the video, please go check it out or click on the I button, you'll find it out. And this in this part we are going to talk about the boundaries of the middle ear cavity. Boundaries of the middle ear cavity. So this middle ear cavity appears like a cuboidal structure. We know the cuboidal structure will be having the six walls, namely the anterior, posterior, medial, lateral, roof and the floor, right? Now, firstly, let's talk about the roof. The roof of the middle ear cavity is formed by the tegment tympani. What is this tegment tympani? So, in my previous video, I have shown you a picture in which I have mentioned about the location. So, like this, right? The petrous part of the temporal bone. So the roof is actually formed by the thin plate of bone of the petrous part of the temporal bone, and that will be separating the middle cranial fossa and the tympanic cavity. So this is a tegment tympani, and this is separating above the middle cranial fossa and below the tympanic cavity. It is actually pierced by the two nerves it is getting pierced by. One is a greater petrosal nerve and the lesser petrosal nerve. And actually the what is importance of this roof is it remains unossified till the 7 years of age. So till 7 years it is actually unossified, so that the infections of the middle ear cavity will be transmitted to the middle cranial fossa, that will be leading to the meningitis, a clinical aspect of the roof. Whereas in the adults, the veins from the tympanic cavity sometimes will be draining into the superior petrosal vein via the persistent petrosquamous suture in the roof. So what is in the infants that is below 7 years is it remains unossified, so that any infections will be transmitting to the middle cranial fossa, that will be leading to the meningitis. Whereas in adults, the veins of the middle ear cavity will be draining into the superior petrosal sinus via the persistent petrosquamous suture present in the roof. So that petrosquamous suture through which the veins are going, and this becomes a way for transmission of the infections to the intracranial sinuses. Okay, now coming to the this is the petrous part of the temporal bone. So this is small, the thin plate roof forming is the tegment tympani. So if you see, this is the internal acoustic meatus, which will be leading to the inner ear, that will be leading to the middle ear cavity, that will be leading to the external acoustic meatus. Okay, now coming to the floor. The floor is mainly formed by the jugular foramina. So how the floor is formed by the jugular foramina. Actually, to say it is a jugular fossa. So jugular fossa on the undersurface of the petrous part of the temporal bone, and here it is related to the superior bulb of the internal jugular vein. Superior bulb of the internal jugular vein. Superior bulb. So another feature of the floor is the tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve will be piercing the floor and ramifies over the promontory to form the tympanic plexus. So what are the two features of the floor? One is a jugular fossa that is present under the surface of the petrous part of the temporal bone, that is related to the superior bulb of the internal jugular vein, and the secondly, it is pierced by the tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. It is also called the Jacobson nerve. So this will be piercing the floor and will be ramifying over the promontory. I'll tell you what is promontory, and that forms the tympanic plexus. Next, coming to the anterior wall. The anterior wall is actually, let's divide this for our convenience into the upper part and the lower part. So this is all the upper part and this will be the lower part. So in the upper part, we'll be having a parallel bony canals. The first bony canal, you could see it is a semi-canal for sake of the tensor tympani, and this is a tubal opening for the passage of the bony part of the eustachian tube. And coming to the lower part, it is actually perforated like this for the passage of the superior inferior carotico-tympanic vessels. Okay, carotico-tympanic vessels. This is all about the anterior wall. But what is the important thing here? Yes. So it is actually related to the posterior wall of the carotid canal. So we know what is passing through the carotid canal. That is the internal carotid artery plus the sympathetic plexus around it. So this is the internal carotid artery, and the sympathetic plexus surrounding it is a relation of the anterior wall. And now coming to the posterior wall, it is actually wider in the upper part when compared to the lower part. So in the upper part, you will be having an opening called the adytum. Right, the adytum we have discussed in my previous video when I have talked about the communication of the middle cavity. I told that posteriorly it is communicating with the mastoid antrum by means of adytum. So this is the adytum. This adytum, it is an opening via which the epitympanum is nothing but the part of the middle cavity above the tympanic membrane. This epitympanum is communicating with the mastoid antrum by means of the adytum, a opening in the posterior wall. And next you can see a depression called the fossa incudus, from which the short process of the incus is suspended. And in the lower part, you can see a vertical bony canal through which the facial nerve is descending to reach the stylomastoid foramina. Okay, in the lower part, you'll be having the vertical bony canal in which the facial nerve is descending up to the stylomastoid foramina. And the important thing here is the pyramidal eminence. The pyramidal eminence, it is a forward projection from the posterior wall, which will be having the stapedius muscle and the nerve supplying it. So what is the pyramidal eminence importance here? You'll be having the stapedius muscle and the nerve supplying it, that is nerve to the stapedius, a branch of the facial nerve in the vertical bony canal. Now coming to the now let us talk about the lateral wall. This lateral wall, it is a mucus covered medial surface of the tympanic membrane. So we know when you consider this as a box, this I have divided into three parts. This is the middle ear cavity. This is the internal ear. This middle ear cavity is actually located between the what? So what is separating this middle ear cavity from the external acoustic part? Yes, the tympanic membrane. Therefore, the tympanic membrane will be forming the lateral wall of the middle ear cavity. Okay, this lateral wall is formed by the tympanic membrane, and this tympanic membrane is represented with the convexity. It is represented with the convexity. How is this convexity phased? The convexity is phased towards the middle ear cavity. So here you'll be having the middle ear cavity, and therefore you'll be having a convexity here. So you can see some, the highest point of the convexity here. This is called the umbo. Okay. Later, what is other feature is the chordae tympani nerve will be passing across the tympanic membrane. This is the tympanic membrane where there's chordae tympani nerve is passing lateral to the incus, medial to the malleolus. Malleus. So lateral to the incus and medial to the malleus. This is the lateral wall. Now coming to the medial wall, the very important and a bit easier to try to understand. So in the medial wall, we'll be having so many features. So first one is the promontory. This promontory, it is a rounded elevation. What is this? Promontory. It is a rounded elevation which is produced by the basal turn of the cochlea of the internal ear. What is that? Basal turn of the cochlea of the middle ear. So what happens here is that tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve, which is piercing the floor, will be ramifying on the promontory. I told you about the promontory when I was talking about the floor. This is the promontory, which is a rounded elevation produced by the basal turn of the cochlea. And postero-superiorly, you will be having an oval window which is closed by the base of the stapes and the annular ligament, and the postero-inferiorly you'll be having a round window, or also called fenestra rodenda, which is actually closed by the secondary tympanic membrane. What is that? Secondary tympanic membrane. This is the oval window, this is the round window, this is closed by the stapes, the foot process of stapes, and this is closed by the secondary tympanic membrane. And this is a sinus, a depression behind the promontory. This indicates the impression or the position of the ampulla of the posterior semicircular canal. What is that? It is a position of the ampulla of the posterior semicircular canal. And here what you could see is the oblique part of the facial canal. So in the posterior wall we have seen the vertical part of the facial canal, but here you can see the prominence of the oblique part of the facial canal. And one more thing is the what other prominent structure here is prominence of the lateral semicircular canal of the internal ear. Okay guys, and this is all about the boundaries and so on. So in the next video I'll be just giving a summary about all the boundaries so that it would be very easy for you to revise before going to your examination. Okay, thank you and best